But we start with this. President Biden is meeting with congressional leaders today at the White House in another attempt to pass a foreign aid package. Additional funding for Ukraine, Israel, and the U.S.-Mexico border all hang in the balance of the ongoing discussions. To help us break it down, I want to bring in CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes and CBS News congressional correspondent Nikole Killion. You can see them there at the White House and on Capitol Hill, respectively. Nancy, I'm going to start with you. Tell us what's expected to come out of today's meeting.
Well, Lana, this is a face-to-face to get down to brass tacks because this supplemental spending package has been sort of floating out there for months now, and the White House is viewing the stalemate with increasing alarm because the funding for Ukraine in particular is a situation where time is of the essence. They've tried to stretch the last of their aid to Ukraine, but it really is running out. And what the White House is what the president is going to convey to these congressional leaders today is that they need to come to some kind of agreement because otherwise the Russians could make new gains in Ukraine that will be difficult to fend off. Of course, the fly in the ointment here is border control policy.
Right.
Republicans have been holding out on approving this additional funding for Ukraine and Israel until they strike some kind of deal with the White House on the border. There are talks that have been taking place in the Senate. I'm sure Nikole can tell you more about that. But there are House Republicans who say, no, they'd like something that goes even further. They are urging their speaker to hold out. And so the president is going to sit down with him face to face today to see if they can find some common ground.
So, Nikole, let's get you in on this. That agreement on the border, that is as Nancy said, the fly in the ointment. Where do talks currently stand among congressional leaders?
Well, they continue to languish, really. You know, obviously, they got underway well in earnest late last year. There had been hope, perhaps, by the time that lawmakers returned to the Capitol following that 3-week holiday break to account for Christmas, New Year's, that they would return with some type of framework or deal in hand. But that continues to remain elusive. That being said, discussions still continue. But this national security supplemental is hanging in the balance. And as Nancy said, you know, this is why the White House, more specifically the president, is calling these congressional leaders to task to see if there's any way that they can try to start moving this along.
So, Nancy, money has run out for Ukraine. The U.S.-Mexico border continues to be one of the major issues propelling voters. So what happens for Biden if an agreement isn't reached?
Well, the president has signaled that he is actually willing to deal on border security and willing to go further than he has before, particularly when it comes to the humanitarian parole policy. And that is something that has been welcomed by Senate Democrats. But you have some House conservatives saying that the speaker is not going to accept any of that, that he's actually going to hold out until there's a Republican president and try to deal with border security then. That's another reason that the president wants to meet with Johnson face to face for only, I think, the second time to really sort of take the temperature here and figure out whether a deal is even possible. Because if it doesn't happen, the White House really doesn't have many other options. There's not some sort of pot of money in reserve that they can dip into to fund aid to Ukraine, aid to Israel. And these are promises that they've made not just to those countries, but to our allies around the world. The president told this coalition of leaders months ago that the U.S. was going to be providing more aid to Ukraine. And those leaders, the White House argued, took that information to the bank, making their own decisions about sticking with Ukraine, even though it has been costly. And so it certainly would be an embarrassment for the U.S. if they weren't able to find some kind of consensus here, especially given that there's a majority of both the House and the Senate that do support aid to both of these countries. They've just gotten tangled up in what has really been an intractable issue on Capitol Hill, here at the White House for decades, and that is immigration and border security.
Yeah, well, and then another part of it is just even the idea of making a deal with the White House. We know that Republicans are a bit fractured even on that question. So, Nikole, I'm wondering, what are you learning in terms of Senate Leader Mitch McConnell and House Speaker Mike Johnson? Are they on the same page with respect to these negotiations?
Well, there is a bit of daylight between Senate Republicans and House Republicans on this issue, specifically between Leader McConnell and Speaker Johnson. You know, Leader McConnell has been very vocal about the need to support Ukraine and the importance of having stability in that region, and, you know, pretty much echoing many of the same points that Leader Schumer has made as well, that just a short time ago, Leader Schumer emphasizing that, you know, the world is watching what the Senate chamber does. So for the most part, the Senate is in lockstep in terms of the need to move forward with this package. But when it comes to the House, Speaker Johnson once again making clear that this really is going to hinge on the border. And House Republicans did pass a border security package several months ago, H.R. 2, and the Speaker emphasized once again that he believes elements of that policy are critical in order for him to buy into potentially any type of compromise. Take a listen to what he told reporters this morning.
H.R. 2 had very important elements: restore Remain in Mexico policy, end catch and release, reform the asylum program, the broken parole process, rebuild the wall. Those elements are critically important. You can't choose from among those on a menu and assume that you're going to solve the problem.
So again, that is one of the messages that Speaker Johnson will be taking to the White House today. We already know that H.R. 2 bill is dead on arrival in the Senate. So again, it just begs the question whether there's any wiggle room between the Republican positions in order to try to move the ball forward with respect to this supplemental, Lana.
All right, a lot of developments expected this afternoon there in Washington. Nancy Cordes, Nikole Killion, know you're going to be checking in on both of those and checking in with us throughout the day. Thank you.